What's the best way to grow your personal brand in 2026? That's a question I get asked dozens of times every single week. And after gaining over 1 million followers in 2025 alone and testing over a dozen different ways to grow and monetize your personal brand, I think I found the answer. So in today's video, I'm gonna go through some of the most popular ways that people propagate or, promote in terms of growing your audience. And I'm gonna rate them in order of what's good, what's bad about them, and what I would give them from an S all the way up to an F tier. Now, to go straight into it, we're starting with the easiest one, which are like hashtags, follow, what I would call sort of like the old brigade of growing a personal brand. And to be frank with you, that's like an F tier, if even that. Reason being is, even the CEO of Instagram has actually said that hashtags, all of that stuff, it doesn't work anymore.
No. Contrary to popular belief, hashtags are not a way to get more reach.
And to be quite frank with you, the biggest negative on it is that from the past, which is like 2018 to 2022, so many bots and like fake followers have attached to specific hashtags, so that when you use hashtags, you're probably going to get a bunch of bot comments and a bunch of bot followers, which doesn't do you any good. And so for that reason, F tier, don't even need to speak about it much. Now, the second thing that we're going to go through are trial reels. Probably one of the hottest topics out there, mainly because, they seem to have been this magic pill that absolutely lets you split test off and blow it up. Now, some of the things that I quite like is the fact that it's free tracking. So essentially, there's multiple ways to use it. You can use it to split test hooks, you can use it to split test topics, and you can use it to like amplify and multiply like winning content pieces that has proven to be viral. Now, the second thing that's pretty decent about sort of the trial reel method is the fact that the input versus output is very good. It doesn't take you any more time to really go and create content. Or if you record like videos just like this, you can literally just spend an extra 1 minute with 3 different hooks and you have 3 different videos you can post. So like on the time side that it takes you or your editing team to test it is actually not very bad. And the output can be significant. We personally had one particular reel where we just changed the first slide alongside the hook and we posted it as 4 different variations. And we actually garnered an extra 3.6 million views, which was very significant for us, to be quite frank with you. And so those are the positives. But the reason I wouldn't say this is one of the best ways to grow in 2026 is this. Number one, the audience quality that you get, which is really what we care about because we want sales, not followers, can be pretty abysmal. Simple mistakes such as, turning off the translation feature or whatever can really ruin who it gets shown to. And because it goes to non-followers, it doesn't really have any data of who engaged with your content, meaning it can be shown to like absolute randos, which means your audience quality might be diluted, which means your actual feed content kind of goes to shit. And so as a result of that, big negative in my eyes. And the second thing is very unpredictable. If you look through YouTube alone, and especially Instagram, there's a new update or a seeming change in the way trial reel algorithms work at the minute, which is because Instagram itself are trying to figure out how to best push out trial reels as a feature to its user base. As a result, I would rank this sort of like a B tier way. I think definitely you want to throw it into your growth stack at the whole time because it's just free testing. But at the same time, if you rely on trial reels as a way to like get leads or like, monetize your brand, I just personally don't believe that it's the best way of actually growing. Now, next up, we have another crowd favorite, which is clipping. Now, I'm gonna be very personal with you. Unless you want to be a big influencer, I think clipping is one of the worst ways to grow. There's a few reasons for it. Number one, aside from some of the big influencers, TJR, Breast Scales, Iman, and co, this doesn't really work for the average person because the reason clipping works is because it just pushes volume out to people who already know that person. So for example, if you follow TJR, someone that's very widely known, you recognize his face, which means if you push volume to his face, people will be like, oh, I'll watch it because I like TJR. Same thing with Breast. But if you're a nobody and your content stinks, clipping more shit and essentially distributing more shit is just going to give you the same result. Even though people say, oh, if you post 100 clips, they get 1,000 views, you get 1 million+ views. It's absolutely nonsensical and it doesn't really work. And so as a result of that, I just don't quite like clipping. The second reason for it is, again, input versus output is just not quite there yet. But more importantly, the monetization element of like, is the audience growth actually leading to sales is absolutely not there. One of our clients spent over $20,000 on a clipping campaign, right? Now, on the positive side, he got millions of views and actually gained 100,000 followers on like one of the clipping pages. But here's the crazy stuff. Despite having over 8,000 link clicks on his link in bio, he generated a fat $0 in sales because the traffic was coming from a third world country that couldn't afford his $5,000 product. And so as a result of that, he was like, clipping is absolutely useless. So to me, that's why I would say clipping is C tier, maybe D tier. Next up, organic reels might sound weird to be its own category, but honestly, I found organic reels to be extremely effective as a growth mechanism. Now, let me reason with you kind of how this works. Typically speaking, people just post reels and they hope that it works. But when you look at reels, similar to like an ad, where it's supposed to like either pull people in who don't know you or turn people from a follower into a buyer, right? When they already already follow you, you actually become very strategic with it. So to kind of reason with you, Instagram's algorithm has become to the point where it can actually pinpoint specific people based on the verbiage you use. As a great example, one of our clients we made a reel for where we used the word Zillow multiple times. And as a result of that, in the comments, we saw dozens of realtors actually comment and engage, and as a result, follow us. Now, this client was in the real estate space, so it was pretty awesome. But it just showed to us that based on what you're saying, you can directly influence who sees your content. And obviously, because that's unorganic, that's one of the most powerful things that I've seen. Because if you're a good copywriter, you are smart with who you speak to from a content perspective, you can directly get exposed to your ICP, which means you don't really need to rely on getting thousands and millions of views in order to be making a few dollars. If you're very intentional and you're very specific, you're gonna get shown to the right people. Now, second of all, when you post organic reels, right, which I think anyone should obviously do, the great thing is like very steady and compounding. Like I kind of think of it as like as exponential growth. If you just post a reel every single day, maybe in the beginning you get 3,000, 1,000, maybe 8,000 views on average. But if you just get 1% better, right, over time you're gonna get 9,000, 10,000 views. And if you post 30 reels a month, they steadily start compounding. And then before you know it, you're gonna average 15 to 20,000 views. And because they kind of add like similar to ad agents, you're gonna start seeing compounding views as a result. Now, to the comment of being an ad agent, you gotta think of it this way. Every single reel that you post, it goes out, it gets shown to like a few non-followers first, as well as some followers, which means if you post 30 of them, you have 30 data sets that go out and kind of reaches new people. And if let's say reel number 1 engages 20 new people, they engage with it, and as a result of it, see some of your previous content, which are kind of serving as like retargeting ads in that sense. And if you do that 30, 60, 90 times, you have all these new people who maybe engage with one piece of content and then see 2, 3 pieces of content more. And as a result, that kind of rein you in. And obviously as a result of that, that then compounds over time. The only negative side is that with organic reels as a standalone strategy, you're very reliant on the mighty algorithm, which is in my eyes very much a losing battle. And so as a result of that, I would actually give it a B or A tier, probably more of a B tier, just because the reliance can really like mess you over, which means if you stick to one specific kind of format for too long, you just kind of get reliant onto it. Now we're going to get the last 3 ones are probably the most interesting ones. I'm going to start with one that we are probably most known for, which is Instagram shoutouts. Now, the premise of how Instagram shoutouts work are extremely simple, okay? You take a organic piece of content that performs better than the average piece, so it's kind of like an outlier, and then you pay theme pages, such as like entrepreneurship facts, mindset therapy, at wealth, and you basically pay those people with millions of followers in your specific niche to repost that content piece onto their feed, and in the caption say, hey, personal brand name has achieved XYZ result and can help you do X, Y, and Z, drop him a follow. Or this person's dropping super much game on how to achieve accomplishment, drop them a follow, they're a must follow type person. So as a result, you basically get exposure into millions of followers for pennies on the dollar, because a lot of these theme pages massively undercharge, which is a great thing. And if you know how to write copy and kind of create content that speaks to your ICP, you'll be getting extremely qualified and high intent people that not only follow you, but also DM you and kind of become leads that you can book onto a sales call. For us, that is a bulk of how we've generated over 100 million client sales. And so for me, as a result, I need to give it like an S tier. Probably one of the best strategies out there, still works extremely well. A bit harder to kind of like build up and get outsized returns just because of the competitiveness and people just wanting shortcuts. But if you actually nail it in, it freaking slaps. And by the way, if you're someone who wants to grow his personal brand, scale his info coaching business, learn how to build their brand, grow a big following, and monetize that to kind of get info and coaching sales, you want to actually check out the link below and see if you work well for our social profit consulting program. Simply put, what we do there is we license you our agency infrastructure in terms of the SOPs, the video trainings our copywriters go through. And on top of that, we train your DM setting team. We provide you with weekly access to myself and my business partner who, has built some of the biggest personal brands on the internet. And we help you one-on-one to not only install it, but also optimize it and advise you on how to exactly build your brand. If that sounds interesting to you, click the link below, chat to our team, see if it's a good fit. And the one thing I will tell you is that we will not try to sell you shit. We try to see where your business is at and whether or not you're even a match for what we know works and what we know we can help clients with. Now, to kind of dive deeper into the shout out side of things, one of the great things is obviously you get attention sort of for pennies on the dollar. The biggest thing that I would say is they're extremely cheap, which means you don't waste a shit ton of money if you try them and they don't work. And to be honest with you, they really amplify what's already working. So you're kind of betting on a winning horse. To explain this, when we look at content, we understand, hey, how many followers did we gain off a post? How many leads did we get? If we understand a content piece gives us a lot of leads for little exposure, we understand if we can just get more exposure onto that content piece, we can essentially just scale sort of the impact and the effect of a content piece, which means more leads, more calls, more sales. That's one of the good things. The downside of shoutouts is they can take a bit of time to figure out unless, you kind of have some experience. So that's one small downside. And if you do it like a fucking donkey and you essentially essentially just go and do group shoutouts or splatter generic like OFs AI slop onto the feed, you're probably not going to get any good returns. You know, people just think like any exposure is good exposure until they have people from like a third world country or what we call non-buyer demographic hitting up their page, and then they think that Instagram's just cooked. So that's pretty much that. Now, as for me, as I said, I would give Instagram shoutouts an S tier, and just for what it is really. Now, next on the list, we have probably the hottest one that people want to know about, which are profile funnel. Now, the profile funnel, just to kind of explain to you the premise of it, is simply put paid ads plus content. As a very premise of it, you take a organic piece of content you think works extremely well or has certain characteristics, and then either you just inside of the Instagram, like sort of like creator suite, you pay Instagram or Facebook to kind of boost it. So you just boost it to a specific audience, and then that audience clicks the check profile, they comment your profile, follow you as a result of that. Or you actually launch an ad campaign and you basically optimize for profile visits, and then you basically just like distribute it to a specific audience. Now, I will go and tell you this, especially if you run a B2B offer, you're a very niche sort of ICP that you try to target, that is a really good way to grow. I think there's a lot of it that I like. What I like about it most is like, one, is actually very scalable. You know, with shoutouts, you might cap out at like 20, 30K in spend, unless you want to go into like really bad demographic type pages, right? Or more like pages where it's not very scalable. With the profile funnel, you can spend 30K, 50K plus per month based on what I've seen and heard as well. And so as a result, that's a really big benefit, especially if you're, you know, an offer trying to crack $1 million, multi-million dollar months. At the same time as well, you can get very qualified people in if you nail in the targeting. That's extremely important. Vice versa, content piece is always the most important piece to the puzzle. But there's a few things that I personally don't quite love about the profile funnel. Number one is, in my experience, and this might just be bias, I just find that the moment you start running ads and sort of Meta realizes you spend a lot, your organic reach gets absolutely cooked, which means you now are reliant on Meta ads again, which is probably the very reason you're trying to grow a personal brand. So that's one of the things I really just don't like. The second thing as well, if you're not a good media buyer and you're just a bit like newer to things, you might just run into the complete wrong audience. And because you can get followers for like 50, 80 to, you know, $1, you can go and like cook your audience very, very quickly, because obviously you get this wrong traffic source into your profile. They engage with some content, and then Meta thinks, oh, we need to show more content to people like this. If it's the wrong type of audience, all of a sudden you have a bunch of people that see that, they don't fuck with your content, you don't get any exposure, then all of a sudden Instagram thinks your profile sucks, and they, you know, kind of drossel your organic reach. That's really the big thing that I quite don't love the most. The second thing is, from a monetization perspective, I just don't love the fact that with, you know, that particular method, you're very reliant on like outbound. So like, I don't like using the new follower feature. I don't like outbounding people, but that's really what you need to do if you really want to get outsized returns at scale. And I just think from a longevity perspective, stuff like this kind of cooks your brand, to be honest with you. Now, the last thing I will say is that a lot of people, when they start running the profile funnel, they get very like ad upset. So like, I could just spend more, and they start neglecting the very key thing that with any growth method is the core, which is the content. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on ads. It doesn't matter how good your setters are. If your content doesn't speak to the right person, the quality is really bad, and you don't understand how to, you know, kind of create an emotional change with people, none of it is going to work, and you're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to waste a bunch. And so I quite like methods that make it very clear that the core focus of the method working is having a good piece of content. And so for me, I would actually give the profile funnel an A tier. I think it's one of the better versions out there, especially if you're running a more niche or B2B offer. But I still think there's a few downsides that I just personally don't quite like as a risk. Now, last but not least, probably one of the very like obvious but underrated methods, you know, which are collabs. So simply put, collaborations are when you post an organic piece of content, you essentially just go and pay either an actual influencer, someone within your niche, or theme pages that we mentioned in the shoutout realm to essentially collaborate with you and come on as a collaborator. Now, simply put, the reason this is awesome is because if you post it and then all of a sudden this other person comes onto it, you kind of get exposure to their audience, right? You kind of audience hijack again, but the reach that your content piece gets to just gets improved. And again, it's kind of betting on a winning horse. Essentially, if I know this content piece is already organically doing well, I just basically plug in more pages, and as a result of that can grow the reach and hopefully the effect. To be very transparent though, there are cases where, for example, we collaborate and the reel's doing really well, collaborations do jack shit, which means we technically kind of waste money. But in the same breath, there's in equally as many instances where a reel's doing really well, we plug in some collab pages and it absolutely blows up and like quadruples the reach that it gets, which obviously I don't need to explain to you, gives you massively outsized returns. So the things that I really like about it is that it can be done very diverse. You can collaborate with people in your industry. You can collaborate with like actual influencers that you might do a podcast with, right? And so it's very easy. It comes on very organically, and the returns on it can be very longevitable, which I quite like about it. The second thing as well, some of the collab features that people don't talk about, like, you know, you go on someone's stream, you know, you go on someone with a big podcast and you basically just collaborate with them live on stream, but then also you post clips and you tag them in it, which means you just get to audience hijack a lot more. And what I found is that when you collab with well-known individuals, right, that are adjacent to your niche, the moment you get exposed to them and you might have a post that goes a bit viral, his audience now gets retargeted with your organic piece of content, which means even as an indirect sort of like impact, you get significant amounts of actual additional reach, which I think is just such a big benefit. Now, for me, collabs, they're really hovering between an S and an A tier. I just think an S tier purely because it's so simple to implement. You bet on a winning horse, and if you do it consistently, you just see such compounding effects, where I just think it's silly not to go and do it. Now, this kind of concludes everything. And I just want to say, as a key thing is, I don't believe in one method being the best one. So for example, for our clients right now, what we do is, as a very baseline, we post organic pieces of content. That is the most important thing. That will always be the thing that will get you the most returns, because if you master this, you won't rely on the others. Number two, as a result of that, for our reels, we do trial reels, right? So essentially we use them, we trial them out just to see which hook works the best, gives a higher hit rate on the organic stuff. Then what we do is we use a mixture of both collaboration posts as well as Instagram shoutouts to really maximize the impact we get out of the highest performing content pieces. We don't use methods if the content piece is just shitting the bed, unless we want to get someone from, 0 followers to 1,000 followers as quick as possible. But realistically speaking, that's really sort of the goal that we have behind all of this. I would really go and assess, okay, where are you? What's the priority goal? What's your ICP? Do they follow theme pages? Do they not really? Is your ICP barely online? Which pockets can you find your ICP and kind of hack your way into it? Whether that be through shoutouts, whether that be through trial reels, or whether that be through, Instagram ads, aka the profile funnel. So my biggest thing to you is like, actually look at your business and figure out what works best for you, and then stack 2 or 3 methods at it first. Now, with that being said, it's pretty much the end of this. I hope this gave you like a good insight into how I think about growing, and also what is, my humble perspective, the best way to actually grow your personal brand on Instagram in 2026. I hope this is valuable to you. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.